Police Detective Sergeant Bob Wells tries to forget the day he discovered one of Australia's most shocking crimes.
You just sort of have lost the majority of your senses for a short period of time until you actually regathered them and realised that it was reality and not a horror scene.
Daily swims are an attempt to wash away the images still lurking in his subconscious.
Clothing, cutlery, meat. It's something I'm still trying to come to grips with even today, emotionally and mentally.
Bob Wells would be just one of the lives forever changed by the deeds of Catherine Knight.
I think most of us expect somebody who's done what Catherine's done to have horns growing out of her head or to be restrained like Hannibal Lecter. But she was a very ordinary-looking woman.
Another to be affected would be journalist and author Peter Lawler, assigned to a story his newspaper couldn't publish.
Editors make a decision whether a story is palatable for people to read with their breakfast in the morning, and there was a decision made that this one wasn't palatable. It couldn't be reported. It was too horrific.
But like many, Catherine drew him in.
I wanted to know that a person who could do what Catherine Knight did was insane or not sentient. But the court decided that she was sane and she could have been the person next door.
Catherine Knight seemed to live on the edge.
She had a wild temper. She had too many boyfriends, too many fathers for the children. She came from a wild family.
By her early 40s, Catherine had experienced 4 rocky relationships. Each time, she was asked to leave. But each time, she found her way back.
She knew how to keep a bloke happy. She put up their mates drinking in the shed. She had dinner ready when they got home. Generally, she knew how to keep a bloke, and she was manipulative like that.
I think she was a very hard woman, very strong physically. I think she probably emotionally very vulnerable.
Her fiancé, John Price, was the type of man Catherine sought out.
She was a tough country girl, and they were tough country blokes. They loved to drink, they liked their knees up on a Saturday night.
But all too soon, each partner discovered Catherine's secret. An illness called borderline personality disorder.
Borderline personality disorder is kind of a catch-all term for a condition that manifests itself, the individual, and it's usually women, it can be men, very moody, tremendous mood swings.
Former FBI criminal profiler Candice DeLong says sufferers can turn quickly from lovers to fighters.
They feel slighted when there was no slight. They are prone to being very suspicious that their partner is cheating on them. Everything reflects back to somebody is taking advantage of me, and I must do something about it.
John Price usually weathered the stormy Catherine, knowing the loving Catherine would soon return. Then one day, his partner went over the line, threatening his job at the coal mine with a home video.
She'd filmed the contents of his garden shed, and in Pricey's garden shed was a first aid kit from the mine, which he'd allegedly stolen.
The pair had argued over money. Catherine wanted revenge. She sent the video to the mine boss, suggesting John was a thief.
The most important thing in most men's lives is their job. And that is the one area that the woman may feel if she can mess this up for him, all the better.
John was fired.
He threw her out of the house, said he'd never have her back. Unfortunately, he had her back within 6 months because Catherine turned on the sweet, loving side again and got back in there somehow.
And I think that there was more so a physical attraction towards her than anything else.
One man knew what John Price was going through.
Well, her mother said to me, just after we first got married, she said, "You want to watch this one? If you do the wrong thing by, she will kill you."
Catherine's first husband, David Kellett.
And I brushed it off as just one of those things that mothers say, and it didn't really dawn on me that, but one day she would go over the edge.
In late 1999, David and John met to compare notes.
I knew John Price, and he said to me he wants to get out of a relationship, but he's scared to get out. And I said, well, these days you can take all these domestic violence orders against each other, whatever. And he was just so scared, he was almost shaking. He was really scared.
Little did either man know, Catherine would soon commit one of Australia's most shocking crimes. In an undisclosed Australian city, David Kellett lives in hiding. Although he left his ex-wife many years ago, recent events make him fear for his life. His former spouse is Catherine Knight.
You can't change a psychopath, and I believe in my own heart she's a psychopathic killer, and she'll never change.
In a small Australian town, Catherine and David, her first love, planned a life together.
To start with, she's the most wonderful woman I think you could wish for. So devoted, perfect mother, perfect housewife.
But Catherine's borderline personality disorder was never far from the surface.
She could snap just like a biscuit. It wouldn't take much to set her off. The slightest thing, if she made a cup of coffee and there's no water in the jug, it's just something as simple as that.
One night, a darts competition almost ended David's life.
One of the elements of borderline personality disorder is that you cannot stand abandonment. And that means if somebody says they're going to be home at 10 o'clock, you want them home at 10 o'clock. And by 10:05, you're in a rage. By 10:10, you're in a murderous rage.
And she rang about 10 o'clock and said, the pub's closed, come on home. And I said, well, the dart competition hasn't quite finished yet, I'll be home when I'm ready.
There was an insult to the core. When he said, I'll be home from the pub shortly, she took that as the same as being stabbed in the heart, as total rejection. And the way to make herself feel better is to exact revenge.
When somebody's getting stressed, it's usually a reaction that comes down to fear. Fear causes the release of adrenaline or epinephrine. So the heart would start beating more rapidly. Somebody would start breathing more quickly. There would be that fight or flight reaction.
David Kellett was coming home to a biochemical maelstrom.
She'd hit me so hard on the back of the head that my eyes went black. I woke up 2 days later in a hospital. Spent all my clothes in the bathtub, everything I owned, every bit of clothing she'd burnt in the bathtub.
And when the fury subsided, the caring Catherine returned.
A couple of days later, after being released from hospital, she went and bought me all brand new clothes. It was just like the type of person she was.
But there was something more frightening than Catherine's moods. A slaughterhouse worker, she brought her tools home to hang above the marital bed.
The knives were hanging on the wall. I had put a special hook there so she could hang the knives, and no one touched the knives. Her knives were the most treasured item that God ever gave to her.
We are drawn to certain jobs, hobbies, vocations, avocations, because of inner needs. My guess is that she was drawn to work in a profession that allowed her to have access and use of knives on a daily basis because that was something that she found interesting, something that met some deep-seated need.
She was just totally and absolutely possessed by knives. They were her life.
Catherine's obsession had a name.
Picarism, which is a clinical term, someone that is aroused or finds pleasure in the idea of cutting, slicing, and stabbing skin. The image in the individual's mind of the knife piercing skin is pleasant for them or even arousing.
Catherine's fascination with blades and her violent moods were on a collision course. The warning signs were enough for David Kellett. He left Catherine after 10 years. John Price wouldn't be so lucky. In small-town Australia, Catherine Knight was brewing her own personal storm. Her target, fiancé John Price. Catherine's ex-husband, David Kellett, knew John was playing a dangerous game.
John Price was a good bloke. I'd only met him the once, but I found him to be very sincere and very scared. I believe he broke off the engagement, and I believe Kathy couldn't stand to be left alone again.
Catherine's borderline personality disorder had proven too much. John asked her to leave, as he had done several times before. But this would be the last. Catherine would end their arguments forever.
The video that Catherine made the day she killed John Price is much like the other videos in her collection. She drove to her daughter's place to film the grandchild, and there's some beautiful footage of Catherine playing with this little baby on the ground. And then there's a moment when Catherine addresses the camera and says, "I love my grandchildren. I hope I will see you all again." And it's as if she's making a last will and testament. This was a signal, a definite signal that she was going to kill John that night and that her life was not going to be the same the next morning.
On the morning of March 1st, 2000, Detective Sergeant Bob Wells was called to John Price's address.
It's still something that has a great effect on me today. It's something I'm still trying to come to grips with even today, emotionally and mentally.
Catherine's fury created a crime scene unlike any in Australian history.
I think upon walking into that particular crime scene, it was horrific carnage that was throughout that house from one end to the other. Had almost anybody who went into the house that day in sort of a feeling of numbness for quite some time before they came to actually register what had actually happened, you know.
Catherine had been to work with her knives.
He was stabbed approximately 37 times, about the body. Information from the forensic people were that one of those blows was a fatal blow to the heart, which eventually was the cause of death.
One well-placed stab is all that's necessary to kill someone. 37 indicates to me a lot of anger, and probably a number of those stab wounds were post-mortem. Just couldn't stop killing him.
But Catherine's revenge would go further, much further.
The murder was ritualistic. Catherine went out that day. She prepared for it. She went to the welfare shop and she bought a black nightie, a sexy black nightie with buttons down the front. She went to his house late.
While visiting her estranged partner, Catherine stabbed him 37 times. She did not stop there.
And at some stage, something clicked in Catherine's mind. She'd had her initial revenge, and then I think she decided she wanted to have some fun. She went back to the life she loved, to cutting up animals and carcasses and that sort of business.
Catherine had been cooking, as she had almost every day, preparing an evening meal of meat and vegetables. When police arrived at the crime scene, they found a pot still warm on the stove and 2 meals waiting on the table. In horror, Detective Sergeant Bob Wells realized that the meal was made from her former partner, John Price.
I really think at the time it was hard for me to say, well, how could any human do that to any other human?
I cried for days, in bed, out of bed, walking around, just to think what she'd done.
Catherine was found asleep in bed. She'd unsuccessfully tried to overdose on prescription drugs. The storm had passed. Night duty. Veterans Affairs Hospital, Northampton, Massachusetts, 1995. It should be a quiet time of convalescing, but one nurse will see that it's not. Kristen Gilbert murders her patients using the ultimate cover: her gender and her profession. In Massachusetts, she becomes known as the Angel of Death.
Do nurses in Northampton go to work every day thinking, oh, I have to be on the lookout for a serial killer? Absolutely not. They don't want to believe it.
Author M. William Phelps, who covered this case, says Kristen believed she was committing the perfect crime. She was above suspicion, her weapon untraceable.
Here you have a blonde, 30-year-old soccer mom driving around in an SUV during the day, taking her kids to soccer practice, volunteering her time at the homeless shelters.
Professionally, Kristen is smart, reacting swiftly in emergencies. No one knows she is creating them.
Henry Houdin was a 35-year-old vet. He was a physically healthy human being, and he had been admitted to the hospital because he had this severe case of the flu. Now, Gilbert, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office, injects him with a dose of epinephrine.
The drug epinephrine stimulates the heart. It's commonly used to treat cardiac arrest, but it can also induce one.
The feeling you get when you run, which is increasing sense of your heart beating or palpitations, your blood pressure rises, you flush. These type of symptoms are exactly what you expect when somebody's given epinephrine.
Picture this. Epinephrine's injected into your arm. Your arm immediately gets hot and it starts burning. Your heart starts racing out of control and you go into massive cardiac arrest.
Kristen calls an emergency code, a hospital alert to the cardiopulmonary resuscitation unit, or CPR. Little does the CPR team know they will only make things worse.
All right, we're gonna have to shock him. Clear.
When a CPR team comes in the setting of a patient in cardiac arrest, one of the very common things you might consider doing is giving epinephrine, which would be a great drug to give in most settings, except in the setting of epinephrine-induced cardiac arrest. Then you'd be basically giving the patient a double dose.
If Gilbert gives an injection of epinephrine to kill this person, and the doctors come in and they give him more epinephrine, you tell me, how are they going to find out that she's using epinephrine to kill these people?
Incredibly, despite the double epinephrine dose, Henry Houdin survives. For the moment.
45 minutes go by. All of a sudden, another code is called by Gilbert on Houdin. He goes back into this cardiac arrest.
Clear.
Investigators believe she injected him for a second time. They save him again. This was a strong man. He fought for his life. He wanted to live, this guy. He wasn't gonna let a 30-year-old soccer mom take his life from him, okay?
Twice more that night, the CPR team is called to Henry Houdin.
Another code is called. Lo and behold, another code. Oh my God, on Henry Houdin. He goes into massive cardiac arrest, but this time they just cannot save him. He goes brain dead. They cannot save his life.
Kristen's tracks are covered by legitimate doses of epinephrine.
People have to think about looking for it. It's not something that's commonly looked for as a cause of death, especially if you're not considering homicide.
So why does Kristen kill people she hardly knows? Prosecutors believe her motive is ego.
During code situations, she was the go-to nurse. She was the take-charge nurse. She took charge of them codes. She gave orders. She directed traffic. She knew exactly what to do.
Criminal profiler Dr. Deborah Sherman Coughlin recognizes this behavior. It's known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
Munchausen is a condition where typically it's a caregiver who will harm either a child or someone who's in his or her care, and then come in and act like a hero in order to get a high and attention and look like a hero. And they crave that excitement, and so they do that over and over and over again.
And there was one person Kristen wanted to impress more than anyone, her lover, the hospital security guard.
When she would inject her victims with the epinephrine, the security guard always had to come to the codes. He was required to do that. And she would flirt with the security guard when she was coding the victims and killing the victims.
During one code, one nurse reported, Gilbert was on top of a patient, straddling a patient like one would straddle a horse. She lifts up her skirt. Look at my garter. and she wanted to show it off while a poor man is fighting for his life.
Kristen Gilbert will regret her final bid for attention. Disguising her voice, she makes a series of bomb threats to the hospital.
Yeah, police officer Prospect, may I help you?
This is my last call. In 25 minutes, I'll see you in hell.
Narcissists, they have to act out. They need an audience. This phone gave her the stage to reach her audience at the Veterans Affairs Hospital.
Police trace the call, finding Kristen's fingerprints on the phone.
It was her undoing because about a week after making this phone call, they got the search warrant, they got their evidence, and they made an arrest. They found this handbook of poisoning, tattered and torn, in the pantry of her home. And they also found intravenous medications. This book, what is the page that's ripped out? What is the page that's most tattered and torn in this book? The page is epinephrine. So she was clearly studying this page.
Kristen's homework doesn't surprise Dr. Deborah Sherman Coughlin.
What I found when I interviewed female serial killers was that they would get books on pathology, criminal investigation, forensic science, and then they would read that information, learn about that information, incorporate it into their fantasies first, and then begin experimenting and use that in their crimes. They learn all about criminal investigation and killing to find out the perfect way to do it without getting caught.
But Kristen does get caught. Not by toxicology, but by traditional police work. She's serving 4 consecutive life sentences for murder. Some believe there may have been more.
Authorities explained to me that there's a possibility that she could have killed 75 people. If that's true, then she would be one of the most prolific serial killers in this country.
Kristen Gilbert, like Marianne Cotton and Nanny Doss, crossed a line few would dare, from fantasy to deathly reality.